the Unapologetic podcast where black politicians ain't shit. And today we're going to talk about something that has really stuck it to us by the Democratic Party in regards to bringing in migrants and letting all of these people come into the country, which is very alarming. It's very alarming, and it's alarming more so to black people than any other group of people in the United States. And the problem is this. In my neighborhood, and I live in one of the oldest neighborhoods in my city. I live in the city of Moreno Valley, California. And I live in an area zone called Edgemont. And the Edgemont zone was where all the military from the people from the base would come, and it's one of the closest areas to the base at the time back in the early 80s. Back in the day, this was the area to be in. And military people would retire here, and then they would go work at a McDonnell Douglas or Boeing down in Long Beach. So it's and this area basically helped form the city of Moreno Valley. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and do some homework here and get this stuff out. And unfortunately, the modern kids, they don't like to live in the older neighborhoods. But the difference between where I live in the older neighborhood versus the newer area is homes in my area were on the old code. So they were made with real wood. These houses were made to last. Whereas I tell people all the time, especially young people, when I was coming up, there was no such thing as a Home Depot. There was no such thing as a Lowe's. Now you have a Home Depot and a Lowe's after spending the median income, they say in California for a home is $800,000, almost $1 million that's the median income for a home. And these homes fall apart within 5 years. And if you don't have any basic mechanical skills, you're going to be paying a lot of money that you've already paid, plus your insurance, plus anything else that might happen in regards to your home. So, my home's a little older. And another good thing about living in an older neighborhood is you're more likely than not have a bigger surface of yard and property. So whenever, young people are talking to me about like, oh, I'm thinking about buying a house, whatever, I always tell them, go to the older neighborhoods first because the houses are made to last. You have more occupancy in those homes. You have less likely of crime and all those other things. But anyway, in my aspect of talking to young people in my neighborhood, I happen to be walking my dog. I walk my dog every day and have had this dog since I retired from the military. So I've had the dog. She'll be 12 years old in October. Love the dog to death. Well, really, she's 11. I always go a year earlier. She'll be 11. But anyway, she was born in 2013. So I see the kids just, walking around listless. And usually it's kids that are either Caucasian or black kids. And I'm saying, well, you're 15, 16 years old. Why don't you have a job? Why aren't you working? Even if you're working part-time, right? It's summertime right now. The school has just let out here for most of the people on the West Coast. Most of the kids are out by late June at the latest. I remember when I graduated, I think we got out June 22nd or something like that. I was in the military 2 days later. So I'm talking to these young people, and they're just, sitting there vandalizing. And when I say vandalize, I don't mean like necessarily spray painting, but I mean they're in the park and they're playing on the jumbo gym that is really for the littler kids. But you know how teenagers are. They get on there and they just do the thing. And, they're not really realizing their weight is making a difference and all that other stuff. So I just, I always like to see young kids and I always ask them, well, what are you doing? How old are you? 15, 16 years old. They can't join the military yet. I joined at 17. My mom signed me in. But so, and maybe that's not their dream. So I said, well, why don't you guys get a job? One of the first things that came out of these young people's mouth was they are not hiring us. And I said, well, why wouldn't they hire you unless, how hard is it to flip a burger? How hard is it to, whatever. And they educated me. And they said, well, one of the problems is a lot of these employers, they want bilingual applicants. A lot of the requirements for a lot of these employers is they want bilingual applicants because as we see with the migrant crisis that is coming in here, a lot of these people are coming from Spanish speaking countries and they're flooding into the markets. And I'm not downing employers or anything that want to have that access to get that customer service space and get that customer. Yeah, you've got to speak Spanish. And so I'm sitting there talking to them and I said, well, And it really dawned and it hit me. This is something that is really putting native born Americans, black, white, whatever, at a disadvantage because a lot of us do not speak Spanish at home. Now, some of the kids that are of Hispanic descent, whatever, first generation, second generation Americans, they most likely are bilingual. So not only are you bringing in a group of people here that is to displace the people that have already been here and built this country, you are now making it feasible that the next generation of black and white young people will be displaced as in regards to competing for jobs. So I contacted my city council and I wrote an email. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir for those of you guys that do show up to city council meetings. You've been in the city and you want to know what's going on with your city and you want to know what is going on in your community. You will go to a city council meeting. You will go and watch a city council meeting. You can do it on the internet. You could do it on public access TV, whatever. To me, there is no excuse as an older person and a homeowner that you do not know what is going on in your city by not attending city council meetings and planning commission meetings. Even if you miss it, you can always do the replay. You can always get the replay. But unfortunately, a lot of us, we're not geared to go to city council meetings. We are programmed to be drones and just go to work, pay the taxes, eat, shit, die. Same old thing over and over and over again. So, after listening to these young people, I sat and I thought about it and I said, you know what, that makes sense. I would be discouraged too because I also asked them, well, why don't you go take Spanish? Is there an immersion program within our city? And they said no. Not where they were at. They're teenagers. So if there was an immersion program when they were younger, maybe from second grade up until sixth grade, they had missed it or whatever the situation is. And so I did my research, and before I did the research, I sent an email to the city council and my city council member and the city staff and the city clerk because I want to get it into official records. When you want something into the official record, always write a copy to your city clerk if you're going to write your city council person, and that goes into the public record. So I inquired, what does it take to do some kind of program to where our citizens who want to learn Spanish can learn it? Because notice in your city, I could almost guarantee you there is an ESL program for migrants and people that are recently arrived here or they're resident aliens or whatever. There's an ESL program that's paid for by the taxpayer, and it's usually free. It's called English as a Second Language. Now, my question is this: why don't we have a program paid for by the taxpayers who are native to the country to have Spanish as a second language? And I'm going to tell you guys a really quick story. I love the Latin culture. There's no doubt about that. I live in a Latin neighborhood. I have literally watched my neighborhood go from Native Americans, speakers, everybody just spoke English, everybody's military, whatever, to basic Spanish speakers, immigrants from other countries that just all they speak is Spanish. They don't want to even learn English. And this is another thing I always bring up when I talk to my friends about reparations and the difference and why we should get it versus letting other people get it, but not giving it to us. We were the only group of people brought here in the United States that was stripped of everything, our whole identity. All other groups get to come here and hold on to their identity, their cultures, and their traditions. Black people are the only ones that have been brought here that we can have no tradition, none of our languages, none of that. Everything was stripped. Horrific situation. And yet the Democratic Party and the Republican Party together, more so the Democratic Party than the Republican Party, deny Black people reparations. Okay. So a quick story for me. My neighborhood is all Spanish, basically. One friend of mine, she was a retired military person, worked at the base over here. She said she's out of here. And she moved to Mississippi. Of course, she was a Caucasian lady, which is fine. You could be Caucasian, whatever it is. And I said, well, why do you want to leave? She had been here for 23 years. And she said, well, the neighborhood's changing, whatever. And so that would be the definition of what we call white flight. And white flight's a real thing. In my city, a lot of the white people that have been in this community actually started this city have fled and taken their money with them. Okay. And that's called white flight. They're going to call it something else, but you got to call it what it is. It's called white flight. So anyway, so I've always loved the Spanish culture. Of course, I was raised in Japan, and when I was in Japan all those years growing up, I'm dealing with the environment that I'm in. So I had to learn, especially when you're younger. When you're younger, you can learn anything. You can learn any language. You pick it up just like that. I'm immersed in the culture. I'm in Japan, Okinawa. Can't say Japan because that Okinawans are not Japanese, but I'm in Okinawa. And there's two different languages right there with slang language. You got katakana and you got kanji. And but when I was younger, I could pick it up. And even when I go back now, if I'm there long enough, I start to remember the phrases and things I need to say, and I become more comfortable because I'm using it every day. So when I was in high school there, I learned Japanese. Everybody told me, "Oh man, you're from California. You better learn Spanish. You better learn Spanish." I'm like, "Nah, you learn no Spanish. Nobody needs those," because I hadn't been in the United States in like 5 or 6 years. So I had no clue that Spanish had, taken over. Though I was from California, you got to remember though, I was a kid. So kids don't look at each other like, oh wow, you're from Spain and you're from Mexico and you don't look at that. You're like, oh, that's my friend, Pablo. I had a good friend named Johnny Bravo. It was just a name to me. It didn't matter. So lo and behold, we come back stateside, and 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 everybody's speaking Spanish, and I couldn't believe it. Right? Got this Japanese that I know, and after 24 years in the military and being in the United States, I'm not using it, so I start losing it. But I do start picking up slang terms of Spanish, un poco and things like that. Just real simple phrases, whatever. But yeah, as you guys know, I have 12 degrees or something like that. I have a lot of degrees, right? I know how to learn. But in the courses of me learning all of this stuff, I tried to go back to college to take Spanish. I'm thinking, well, how hard could it be? I'll just take Spanish. Maybe it's beginning Spanish. I don't know, but I take it. Took it twice in college. Failed it miserably. Well, withdrew before I failed. I withdrew because in college you have to have beginning Spanish either in high school or somewhere else so that you could be successful on the college level. They do not go back. They're not going back to beginning Spanish, which I think is kind of stupid because the world is Latino. The Latino world order is starting to take over in the United States. Okay, the Latino world order is taking over the United States. They are flying them here, flying the blacks and Haitians out. Okay, Latino world order. That's the cause of the day. So my question to you guys, if you're a parent, how can you prepare your children to compete if they cannot speak nor understand Spanish? I was in a store the other day, a lady at the cashier register, she had to call for somebody that is Spanish speaking to translate. Now, I know you guys would say, Donovan, you always go to the Dominican Republic, you're always in Panama and stuff. How do you communicate there? Google Translator. You just take Google Translator and you put it out there, and they even have the ones where you have the earpiece, and if somebody's speaking to you, it translates into your ear what they're saying. And then when you want to speak back, you show them your phone and it like writes into your phone what you're saying to them so they can read it. But you don't have to look at your phone all the time. It'll translate in your ear, kind of like a UN translating device, basically. So, but as Black people, Caucasian people that are native to the United States, how does the next generation compete? And it never dawned on me, and it made sense to what these kids are saying. And I can see where the frustration in their mind is coming. I can't get hired because that is another barrier to prevent me from getting a job because I can't speak Spanish. That is another barrier to a job. Now, you guys will say, well, blah, 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 blah. We're the only country to where we don't have another language, right? You go to any other country in the world, English is always the second language. It's not mandatory, but everybody can speak some form of English no matter where you go in the world. No matter where you go in the world, other countries have English as like a second language. So, my proposal to my city council was this: if we are giving free classes to native, migrant, resident aliens here in the United States that do not know English, that do prefer to learn English, we should also have Spanish as a second language to learn for those who might be older and just now starting. So I don't know about how it is in other cities, but you know how in some cities they have like this guide that tells you what the city is like offering and teaching. Like you have your baseball leagues, you have your basketball league, you have like somebody that teaches karate, arts and crafts. You have like the dance thing, whatever. You got guitar lessons. You got all those things. So one of my proposals that I had wrote to the council and my representative was, why don't we maybe do this so that people that want to learn Spanish at a discounted rate, we shouldn't charge them some exorbitant rate when we're giving ESL classes for free. But then again, I don't know what the funding of that is. Hopefully, they'll get back to me sometime this week and tell me. But but even if somebody can teach it, at a discounted rate or whatever, I would love to take that and enhance my Spanish speaking skills because I travel in Latin America a lot, and I really would like to learn. I'm not that young hard headed kid, that I don't need Now I realize I really need it, and I would take it seriously. But so what I see is that our children are at a disadvantage when it comes to employment now. Not only do they have to compete with these people of their level and at their age that are coming in with all the advantages. Now they're disqualifying our children because they can't speak a language that isn't required and shouldn't be required here to live in the United States, which is English. English is the language you speak in the United States. And I think that if you're a parent and you're listening to this podcast, you need to inquire, or at least if you, especially if you have younger children, if there is an immersion program within your city. So not only did I contact them because I don't know which venue is what's what. I know the city council does a lot of money and the school board does a lot of money. I know some people are saying, well, you should address that with the school board. I did address it with the school board. And I also went and looked and found employers that are advertising. They want employees, and the sign says Spanish speaking, bilingual preferred. Spanish speaking, bilingual preferred. It's almost like when you see a job that might pay $80,000, right? Or let's say $60,000. And it's a job, it's a lucrative job, but it says the minimum requirement is an associate degree. Minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree. Everyone knows that if you don't have the minimum requirement, you can't even apply. Applying is ridiculous unless they say, your experience is equivalent to whatever, whatever, whatever. Now, if you're a young person, put yourself in young people's shoes. If you're a young person and you know that you can't be bilingual and you're not bilingual, you have already taken yourself out of that potential job pool. Now, what's really sad is young people need uh, experience, some kind of work experience. And now they are edging our younger people out of job opportunities for their people to make sure their people get those jobs. And I'm not downing employers. I'm not downing employers because if your customer base is predominantly Hispanic, you want that customer base and be able to communicate with those customers. But it puts native speaking Americans at a disadvantage. And I got to speak mainly on people that look like me because speaking Spanish isn't something that is really pushed in my community. Usually Spanish people, when they get to this country, they move into our neighborhood. Okay. So are there immersion programs? Yes, absolutely there are immersion programs. I'm very sure there is. But what we got to do as parents is make sure that those immersion programs are mandatory. Are mandatory. And since we've missed a whole group of young people, we need to put in a program called SSL, Spanish as a Second Language, so that for those who want to take advantage of learning that second language can do so. I don't know about you guys, but I am seeing the writing on the wall in what they are doing, the Democratic Party specifically. A lot of these immigrants come here as Democrats under Democratic policies, and yet once they establish their business, once they entrench themselves into the programs and everything that they can take advantage of, then they become Republicans. And it doesn't matter what party you're in. These parties are both in cahoots to keep black people down. So I did send a email to a school board member that I know here in my city, and she's working on it. She is absolutely working on it and looking into how we're going to do this because it's a disadvantage. So if our children as teenagers cannot establish a job history or job experience, these are going to be your roving gangs, young people running around vandalizing the community because they have nothing else to do. In my city, there's not even a youth center. So what do these teenagers do all summer long? They walk around getting into trouble. A lot of them, most likely, with everything that's going on, come from single parent homes. And I'm going to speak specifically about Black people. 80% of all children are born in single family homes led by females. That's 80%. So you got a 16-year-old young man that is now probably twice as big as his mother, who's frustrated because he can't provide, he can't get employment or whatever. What do you think that young man is going to do in a sense of desperation? But this is why I always say politicians ain't shit. This is what I mean. Black politicians ain't shit because they don't care a damn thing about their own people. This is what I talk about. This is what I say all the time. But oh, I'm paranoid. I'm the bad guy. I'm this or I'm that. I'm pointing out these subtle things that they do that we think is no big deal, but it becomes a problem down the road. We got to start as Black people. We have to start thinking strategically. Okay, not tactically. Tactically is good at the moment, but strategically, you have to think of the long game in regards to where we fit in this country and in this world. And as older people, some of us who are established and who have the means, or we're the adults or we're the parents, if we do not set our children up for success, of course they're going to fail. Of course they're going to fail. And they're going to blame you that you didn't see this coming. Now, I have cousins that are and have graduated the immersion program. Okay, they've graduated. They took advantage of what they need to do. And it's really funny because two of my cousins, and these cousins are super younger than me. Their name is Miranda. All right, so they come from the Latin culture already. But this is the thing that kills me about a lot of other cultures that come here to the United States. It doesn't matter if you intermarry or not. That's not the issue. You can intermarry all you want. It's like I tell my Okinawan friends that might marry a Caucasian man or might marry a Black man if you're Filipino or whatever. You've got to teach the kids both cultures, not just one, because the world does not see them as a white man or a white girl. They see them as more likely an Asian or a Black girl. But that's no excuse for them not to know both of their cultures. And it's crazy to me when I run across a first generation or maybe even a second generation Hispanic from Mexico or Central America, which is very prevalent here in Southern California, they can't speak Spanish. It blows my mind that their parents, who speak nothing but Spanish, and the broken English that they speak, the parents could barely speak English, but the kids speak no Spanish whatsoever. And that puts them at a disadvantage because they have the last name, they look Hispanic, but they can't speak speak a lick of English. It's crazy. It is crazy. So that is something we really got to think about. And since we're on the topic, Democratic Party still has done nothing for Black people. And if you guys notice, the Democratic Party is at a panic right now. They are at a panic. They are trying everything in the book to make sure Black people vote. And this is the scare tactic of using a Donald Trump. Oh, well, if Trump doesn't go, the timing of it, he could still win and be president and go to jail or whatever the deal is. And I want to speak about this real quick. Okay. Everybody's talking about, oh, well, can't he pardon himself if, he wins the presidency? Absolutely not. I want you guys to use your common sense. You cannot be a judge in your own case. Common sense? Common sense. So can Donald Trump pardon himself for crimes? No. No. Think about it. If you got accused of a crime, why can't you be your own judge in your own case? What would be the outcome of a case like that? So no, he cannot be a judge in his own case. And yeah, they might try to litigate it or whatever, but this is white people foolishness. And when I say white people foolishness, I don't mean to say that to be disrespectful, but this is how crazy it's gotten because these are the people making all the decisions. These are the people that have all the levers of power. Okay. You don't see a bunch of Black people controlling it. Kamala Harris doesn't control anything. Bigot Joe Biden, he controls everything. This is all between them. Okay. You cannot be a judge in your own case. That's ridiculous. That's just basic logic and common sense. All right. So, I want to throw this alarm out there. And if you guys have been following Brother Phil on the African Diaspora News Channel, I'm very sure he's going to either talk about it or elaborate on it a little bit. Because I think it's something for the future generations that we as Black people got to think about. How can we compete when we can't even apply because we lack a certain tool in our toolbox? Hispanics come right into our neighborhood. They assimilate they don't even assimilate. They come into our neighborhood, they set up shop, then they set up their own community and separate themselves from us. They got their culture and their language. Asians come into this country, they come into our neighborhoods, they set themselves up, they separate. Culture, language is still intact. They get reparations, they get all of this aid and help to get them going, to be successful, and even in some cases to be a generation or two, maybe even three ahead of us. Asians are the wealthiest group of people in the United States. How did that happen? We've been here for over 400 years. Black politicians ain't shit. Now they're bringing in the Hispanics. Hispanics are going to come in, and what did they do? What did they do? Brother Muhammad up in Chicago, when they were trying to talk about migrants and all this other stuff, he was like, you can't get in line ahead of us. Period. Period. But notice how the Hispanics were like, oh, no, we're going to work with you guys, whatever. You look at their sheet, there was nothing in there specific that they said about Black people. It's all because they know how we are. We're not going to research anything. We're not going to look up anything. They know this. This is what they know. It's a very, very sad commentary. Some people are out there at probably right now asking me, where's Demetra K at? Demetra K is with her father this week. So even I forgot about that. I called her and said, where you at, woman? And she's here in California, very gloomy California. It rained last night. We still have June gloom. It was May gray. Now it's June gloom. I mean, we haven't really had any sunny days here in California. It's very unusual. That means either we're going to have a late summer or it's just unusual. Usually this time of year in Southern California for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years that I've been retired, it's scorching at this time of year. But right now, it's not doing that. So ring the alarm, you guys. Ring the alarm, Black people. We are having babies and we need to have more babies. I'm not saying irresponsibly. But if you got a child that is in grade school, you need to make sure that child is in a Spanish immersion class. The future is Latino. Latino world order is here in the United States. That is who is replacing us. That is who you are going to go to for a job in the near future if you want to compete. If you want your children to compete, they're going to have to learn to speak Spanish. Ladies, if you're in the strip club and you're a single mom and you're doing that, right? Hispanics, go to the strip club. You got to know how to, to talk that talk and get it done and get that money. You got daughters, prepare them to do that. That's the future. That is the strategic game of life. You got to see a problem coming down the pipe and know how to address it later on, so that you're not going to go without. It never struck me until I talked to those teenagers why they're running around, whatever. And you can see that they really do want to work at a young person, especially if you come from a disadvantaged situation of a single family home, especially for people that look like me. If you're a black person, your mother's got 4 or 5 kids, and she's out there getting it and struggling and doing all that. The older children want to make their own money to make it less heavy on mom, right? They can buy their own shoes, they can buy their own school clothes, they can do those things. But how are they going to do that if nobody's hiring them at no fault of their own? We have to enroll our children in dual immersion programs. We have to do it. We have to do it if they want to compete. Do you know how many jobs that are out there that I saw when I was doing my research that are available if you can speak 2 languages? Yes, it's really great to be Hispanic and look Hispanic, and you're dealing with somebody that looks like you that speaks pretty much Spanish. But it even looks better for your company when you got a black man or a black woman that is speaking Spanish and converses. It makes your company look that much greater. I remember when I was in Japan, and a lot of Japanese are racist. That's just how the Asian culture in general, they're no different than any other culture. They have a class system and a color system and all that other stuff. The worst Asian community that I have ever experienced of racism was in Vietnam. When I went to Vietnam, if you are Ameri-Asian, and those are those Vietnamese kids that were left there by the American soldiers and the French soldiers and stuff like that had gone during the wars, those kids, especially if they've got black skin, they're at the bottom of the rung in the culture. You don't believe me? Go there and look it up for yourself. I was there. I was appalled. You're seeing this 6'2" young man, dark skin like me, but only speaks Vietnamese. That's all he knows. But he's ostracized by his culture because of his mixed race. Okay, even some of the girls, they're same thing. They're at the bottom of the culture there. Okay, so I was funny, and I was in Japan one day, and I'm in line at the supermarket, and I see this. At the time, I was probably in my early 20s, maybe I was like 24 or something. And I'm in line at this Japanese supermarket, and I'm on the mainland Japan near Ibukuni, Marine Corps Air Station. And I hear this Asian lady, I guess she assumed I didn't understand Japanese. And she was saying how, we're not supposed to be there. Um, black, she was really, into her racism type stuff. And she learned that from the white American service members, after World War II. I mean, this is something that's factual. If you go back in the history books, you will read at the end of World War I, World War II, because the white soldiers were so threatened by the black soldiers in our popularity, can you say, because we make it hot wherever we go, that they would put stigmas on us like, oh, black men have tails, oh, they're this, they're related to the ape, and all the stupid stereotypes. And a lot of these cultures who never really have black people believe it. And some of them still believe it to this very day, especially the older ones. And so she was very surprised when I answered what she was saying, and she was like, oh, and she's, oh, I'm sorry, oh, she was really into her feeling because she did not realize that I understood what she was saying. So it's going to be an advantage. Strategically thinking black people, we've got to do that. So where are our black politicians that are supposed to be looking for this hindsight? Notice that all these black politicians are silent. They're just silent out here. Why do we keep electing them? So some people have asked me, oh, the Democratic Party, they've done this, they've done this, they've done that. They make sure, black people are taken care of with food stamps, whatever. Is that a good thing? They're going to give us programs. Name me a government program for black people in regards to black people that was good for black people. Oh, they give us housing program. Show me a successful black housing program or anywhere in the United States that isn't a hellhole. Just name one. Name one where there's not single motherhood, gangsters, drugs, all kinds of problems. Doesn't exist. Government programs are made to keep you in control. There's an old saying, if a person, the person that feeds you and houses you could evict you and starve you, you're at my beckoning control. But look at how the Democratic Party treats us like shit, but expect us to give them our vote for nothing. For nothing. If I had a choice between living in government housing and living out in the woods, I'll take my chances in the woods. I would take my chances in the woods because I know I have a better chance at real freedom than living under the repressive rules and regimes of a system that encapsulates me. How many of you guys remember the movie New Jack City? What was the name of the apartment that all the residents were trapped in? It was called the Carter. Did the government even care? The government sets up these housing areas and they won't even secure them. They won't even make sure that the residents take care of the property because they know how black people are. We are infantile in how we think. And that's how they treat us. Go out there and vote, nigga, and give us your vote, and don't you say nothing. Or if not, I'm gonna take your food stamps. We'll take them at this point. We're gonna kick you out of housing. Well, you know what? They're already doing that. Black people are 50% of the homeless population in the United States. How is that? But migrants could come here and they get housing. They solve the housing for them. They've giving them food, giving them everything they need to be successful, and they're not even citizens. You tell me, black politicians ain't shit. Hey, you guys, I'm Donovan Sadiq, and please join me on Sundays. I'm a contributing producer on the Dimitri K Show, Sundays, 3 p.m. Sundays, every Sunday, unless we say any different. And we also have a podcast that happens on Tuesday, and we go live on Tuesday as well. So please look for the Dimitri K Show on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. We're on there. And also, I am Donovan Sadiq. I'm on all of the podcasting platforms that you have if you want to listen to something good. Black politicians ain't shit. Unapologetics, which is what you're listening to right now. And that's on the thing. And then also the Donovan Sadiq Show. And I'm going to start putting more of these Razzies up as they come. You guys have a great, great evening. Please be safe out there. And please look into your local school board and go to your city council meetings and send an email and let them know, where is our dual immersion program? Our kids are at a disadvantage. I'm Donovan Sadiq. You have now been informed.